Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is an even shorter supply than genius. Peter Thiel, author of the book 0 to 1. Out of all of the thought leaders I've studied meticulously in my lifetime, Peter is one that stands in a category of his own. He's built multiple billion-dollar startups like PayPal and Palantir, and has also led the team of many, many employees from PayPal who have also went on to build enormous companies like Elon Musk, Jeffrey Stoppelman, and David Sachs. And that's exactly why in this week's episode of MasterTalk, I'm going to break down the brilliance of Peter Thiel so you too can gain the ability to reflect and share ideas as thoughtfully as he's able to. So let's get thinking. Number one, the thought process behind your ideas matters much more than your conclusions. Out of every single speaker that I have featured in this series, I can proudly say that Peter Thiel is by far the worst communicator out of all of them. So why in the world am I featuring him? I'm featuring him because the way he defends and explains his arguments is so thorough and well detailed that you just have to listen. And that is a lesson in and of itself. Peter's shy, he's introverted, but whenever he speaks, you always want to listen because his perspective is so unique. Here's a quick example for you. When Peter talks about the idea of competition, most of us say competition is good because when you compete with other people, it creates a healthy economy and allows that economy to grow. Peter begs to differ. He says, wait a second, if you start a business, why would you start it in an area where there's so much competition? It's going to be so much more harder for you to stand out. And the example he uses is if you open a new restaurant in your area. Well, you might say that your food is unique, but there's so many restaurants there that's going to be much harder for you to win in the market versus a company like Google that pretty much has such a stronghold on a few industries like search. This is just a small sample of Peter Thiel's brilliance. And the lesson for all of us as thought leaders, as speakers, as people who want to share ideas is how can we be more thoughtful, more thorough, and more detailed in the way that we share our thought process versus just our conclusions. Number two, controversial thinking is the fastest way to building thought leadership. Peter Thiel's work, out of every video, every podcast, every book I've consumed in my lifetime, is unique. It stands in a category of its own, especially his book 0 to 1. And the main reason is because he's so controversial. Every truth that we think is true, he just puts up on a pedestal and goes, yeah, it's wrong. And you start to question life as you read Peter's work and how he shares ideas. He also has this great question that I'd love for you to not just write down, but also reflect as you're watching this video. I'd even encourage you to pause right now and watch and reflect that very question. The question is this: what do you believe in that most people disagree with you on? See, this is a fascinating question because the nature of it forces you to answer something that most people think is not true. And being controversial helps you figure out ideas that don't exist yet in the marketplace. And as you start thinking along those lines, you're a lot more likely to find those one or two golden nuggets and say, oh, that's really good. Let me share that more often. And that's how you build your unique persona. And finally, number three, pick the right medium and double down on it. Going back to Peter, like I mentioned earlier, he is by far the worst speaker in this entire series. But that's a lesson too, is Peter realizes that. That's why you don't see a lot of keynotes where Peter is presenting and giving a presentation. You actually see him most of the time being interviewed on a podcast. That is what I call strategic. This is where we align our message with the medium that we share that message on. So when you think about your ideas and how you want to communicate them, you don't need to just think about, I want to be a public speaker in front of 1,000 people. You don't have to do that. You can also say, wait a second, I'm much better at writing, much better at being on a podcast. And finding that right medium that works for you allows you to not only share your message, but in a way that's sustainable for you so that more people get impacted by it. So don't just focus on the message, focus also on the medium. And when you find it, double down on it. Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is an even shorter supply than genius. This is a quote by Peter Thiel that I'll remember for the rest of my life. It's a constant reminder for all of us that it doesn't matter how smart we are. If we don't have the courage to share our ideas, no one will hear them. And that's why I encourage all of you, because all of you are brilliant thinkers, or you probably wouldn't have made it to the end of this video. So the goal is not to just think more, it's to do more, it's to take action. It's to share a YouTube video, to start a podcast, to guest on a blog, even if you're not in the mood, even if you're not feeling like it, but to have the courage to do it anyways, despite the fear that we have. And when we make the decision to do that, now that, my friends, is true leadership. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of MasterTalk, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to see more videos like this. And if you know one person who's a fan of Peter Thiel's work and startups in general, be sure to send them this video so that they'll be one step closer to building the future that they want to create. Take care.